Palun, jah.
What is Estonia? Estonia is an innovative Baltic country which, regardless of its small size, has had remarkable achievements in e-solutions. We have built a secure digital society, making it one of the most advanced e-states in the world. Did you know that we only need one click to do tax returns? And we can vote on elections online. And 99% of the public services are available online 24/7. Our ID cards provide digital access to all these services, making everyday lives more time efficient and environmentally friendly. Living in the e-state. All that glitters is not gold. There is a cap in the digital competencies, which makes the future unbalanced. We are surrounded by the lack of knowledge about what it means to be living in the digital age, what crucial competencies of tomorrow and in 50 years are, in general, what the future holds for youth. We need to include young people and provide them with more possibilities to be able to influence the decision-making and the developments. Let's make it work. University of Tartu Narva College, the Youth Work curriculum has developed a new module of digital youth. Narva College has started to tackle the problem already in 2017 with the help of the Estonian Youth Agency of the Archimedes Foundation and Erasmus+. This project started off with an international digital youth expert seminar and has mapped the issues and areas of digital age together with developing specific subjects. The goal is to provide inspiration and a platform for exchange and cooperation, to develop ideas and solutions relevant and necessary for young people about the issues of digital age and living in it. Be inspired and participate with Digital Youth Future is Now. For more information, visit narva.ut.ee/digi.
Good morning, Madam President, Honorable Director of Nordic Ministers, Council of Ministers Office in Tallinn. Dear friends, on behalf of University of Tartu Narva College, I'm happy to welcome you to Digital Youth 2018 Future is Now conference. I'm really happy that you all made it here. My name is Toomas Roolaid and I'm to moderate, to host you today. There is much more important and interesting speakers ahead today after me, so I do my best now to pass on you some information about today before we get to the really interesting part of the program. So, a first warning to you that whatever happens in this room today is a plenary part. We have the live broadcast to Postimees online newspaper, so if you lie to your parents that you're coming to Narva for a party and good time, and you don't want to be caught doing something serious, so just beware. We have some things prepared for you today. Firstly, I would like to turn your attention to Siiri Taimla from Joon Media. She's going to be our visualizer today and visual mapper of today. So we will see whatever we talk here emerging on the board. And also she will be in some of the parallel sessions with us, understand. And tomorrow we can see the whole recap of today. Thank you for being here with us. Second thing that we have here is the wish board that you kindly filled with different wishes. We just wanted to experiment what would happen if we go really low tech on the conference of digital future. I understand there is an expectation of inspiration, flow, new experience and friends, but some people really want to take risks and there's a little heart. I don't know, what did you mean? Did you mean to take risks and you love it, or you made some risks about personal life? I hope you luck a lot. There is an expectation for new methods in the youth work, and I think you're really in the right place because this is going to be a topic of many parallel sessions. And there's some person concluded very philosophically that we are going to die if we don't keep living. So I kindly ask all of you to follow this advice during the event. So thank you for this contribution on Wishboard. It was really fun looking how it comes about. Okay, few more words before we go on is that a program you have within your material, so I will not waste your time of verbalizing it. But basically what we do, we have plenary session here until lunch. After lunch we will have parallel session when you can open some ideas, and then we're going to team up, and then you're going to have a team for the rest of the evening and until tomorrow that you're going to work on some solutions with. So if you really don't like other people speaking, you're not going to suffer long, but very soon it will get quite messy with people looking for the teams and colleagues to develop thoughts. And there are some people to help us. Can I have our volunteers to stand up and show themselves? They have these white shirts. You see some of the people. These are the people that we hopefully you can turn to. You can ask for advice, whatever your problem is. And these are the people thanks to whom we can have this event. So, and I think as for the very practicalities, that's about this. But for welcoming remarks, I would like to invite Christer Haglund now, Director of Nordic Council of Ministers Office in Estonia. I got it this one time now. Mr. Haglund, please.
Thank you, Madam President, dear students, teachers, and friends. On behalf of the Nordic Council of Ministers and our partners, I wish you all warmly welcome to this conference today. It goes without saying that the subject is of utmost importance for all of us, since the digitalization is already now embedded in our everyday life, and especially, of course, here in Estonia, where you live in a digital society already. I'm also glad to see that there are so many participants from all over Estonia, not only Estonia, but also from the neighboring Nordic countries, from Finland, from Sweden, from Norway, from Denmark, and I think that we even have participants from Greenland, so this is a truly international conference, and that's really great. When talking about the digital societies, it's good for us to understand that everything that can be digitalized will ultimately be digitalized. But we have also lately realized, of course, that a digitalized world is not a 100% paradise. After all, we are human beings, and since the digital revolution is so new if you compare to the history of mankind, then you realize, of course, that the basic needs cannot be fulfilled with digits alone. But it is a great assistance and opens up a lot of new potentials. But as with all innovations, it can also be misused, and that is exactly what we are going to talk about during these 2 days. But we will also talk about, this will also be a place to discuss about of how we could turn digital developments into sustainable solutions, into something beneficial to our regions, societies, and human beings. And you all have to remember that you are the future leaders, the future decision makers, the role models. So it's up to you what kind of a world you would like to live in. I mean, it's really nice with twinkling stars on Instagram photos, but of course we would like to see even more beneficial things happening with the digitalization. So I urge you to think really big and out of the box. Me personally, when the digital world opened for me in the high school, when a voluntary computing class was offered, but unfortunately at that time I didn't took part of it. Instead I played ice hockey and football, but later on I became very much involved with digitalization. But like with automation, robotization, digitalization, we could expect even more, and we should expect even more to happen. For example, the previous generation before me, thanks to partly to the automation, they decided to change the work week from 6 days a week to 5 days a week. And I think that was a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I would like to see, of course, at some point that we could go from 5 days a week to 4 days a week and spend more times with our families, our parents, our kids, singing, writing, working with startups and so forth. But it's up to you now to discuss these issues during these 2 days. And with these short reflections, I hope that you will have 2 wonderful days with creative and inspirational discussions. And now it is my honor and pleasure to give the floor to the President of the Republic of Estonia, Mrs. Kersti Kaljulaid. Please.
Dear students, experts, dear listeners, thank you, Nordic Council of Ministers, for this nice opening word and for your support of this conference. It also gives me the opportunity to recall the Nordic Council of Ministers to start using finally the opportunities of e-Estonia, namely the e-residency program, to safely manage your business in the whole Nordic countries. The benefits would be huge, because then your politicians in Nordic countries will be much more understanding what they're talking about when they're talking digital. And this is something which it's difficult to even understand what Estonia has done differently. But the only thing what Estonia has done differently when we are discussing digital is that our government went together with private companies into the search of technological opportunities at the turn of the century. Hence, now and every day, we are not regulating for this private sector this weird technological world which we don't get ourselves. We are regulating for the safety of our public service, for ourselves. When most politicians globally think how to regulate Facebook, and by regulation I don't mean bad things, I mean a safe legal space where people and businesses can all operate. When they think regulating Facebook and all other these things out there, they are regulating aliens. We are creating space, the legal space, for ourselves to provide services to our people. And I believe that the Nordic countries with their, volume effect, and Estonia with its, quick innovation sector in public sector, we are able to be the model for 21st century and also remain an economically powerful region as a whole for the 21st century if we work well together here. We will continue innovating, we will continue embracing new technologies into public services, because this is our service culture. You will continue questioning and testing what we have been doing and only following when your much more conservative thinking society is trusted fully. But when you have done it, we get the volumes which we need to convince the rest of the world. And this will actually bring us also, and you all, because you will be working in this wonderful environment of Nordic countries, for you these opportunities. And your opportunities, of course, they listed there. To a certain extent, I always feel embarrassed when I stand up and start talking to young people about digital. The reason I feel embarrassed is like nobody invited me in a room when I was 15 and asked me to speak about the world with electricity. I mean, electricity was there, it had always been there. And we didn't have conferences how to live in the world which uses electricity. I'm very weird. Or cars or whatever, I mean, or planes. I mean, for some reason, for you, all the time we come together, we elderly people, and try to explain to you that you are living in this digital technological world. You have never known the other world, so I feel always a little bit embarrassed that we keep doing it. But I was invited to do it, so I'm here to highlight the importance of technology and digital, and to explain to you what's necessary. I think, if I think about the future, then I think of 3 things: curiosity, empathy, and the will. One must be very curious to find solutions, and curiosity sparkles from nothing else than knowledge. And Estonia has always emphasized knowledge, education to a certain extent. We enable a very egalitarian education to all Estonian children, as to, of course, all Nordic countries. And we get really good results from schools. Everybody has an opportunity to also go to the best universities in our countries, never mind how rich or poor their parents were or where they grew up. Knowledge is a value in Nordic society, and has always been a special value in Nordic society. But this knowledge provision, you have to radically change. We provided you with the school curriculum, which honestly we did the best we could. We thought we will give you a certain technological information about what is up and coming, and we thought you need to learn maybe even programming skills to participate in technology world, and we were massively wrong. I mean, nowadays it's extremely easy to participate in technology knowing nothing of technology. I mean, you just talk to your Siri or whatever, and it's getting more and more easy. But it doesn't mean that knowledge will lose its importance. Knowledge will not lose its importance. It will simply be available differently, and you need to teach children differently, much differently. And I'll give you a very simple example. When you ask, I think also today here you will have people who have been in the speakers list who have been speaking in schools around here. I think Miss Linda Liukas was speaking in Narva Estonian school, and those kids there spoke 3 languages. I mean, Estonian, Russian, English. And they spoke English despite the fact that their school textbook thinks that they shouldn't be able to do anything more than form some simple sentences at their age. But they all do speak. It's the first-hand example on how digital has changed the way our children learn. Our children learn totally differently. They learn what they are interested in. And what is the result? The result in the school is a composition of a class where kids have a massively different understanding of the subject matter. It wasn't when I went to school. I mean, we mostly were all at the same level in math or in languages when we were in the grade 5 or grade 7. You aren't. Your kids will be even less. So by definition, you cannot teach based on average knowledge anymore, which means that the school will be totally different. Probably it will be supported teaching. This way that children will learn online. There will be modules where you will test your knowledge based on feedback. You take next module or move back to the previous one if you have not achieved necessary level. Probably if you move back to the previous module, you can choose a little bit different way of doing things in order to gain the knowledge you failed the first time. And the teacher will only supervise. Because otherwise, it's not anymore possible to teach kids in the classes based on the class composition of a certain age of kids. It's absolutely impossible. We lose the attention of children. Yes, teachers have been blaming computers and digital devices quite long for the attention span shortening of the kids. And there might be some truth in it. But the fact is that the bigger reason, in my mind at least, probably is that the kids simply know already what teachers are teaching them, or don't think it is important for them to know this, because they learn different things from different sources. So the school system, to provide for the curiosity of children, their natural curiosity to learn, will radically have to shift in the coming 10, 15, 20 years. And the question may be, will there be teachers at all? Well, I'm quite sure that the educational opportunities for African poor regions will also sometimes be greatly enhanced, that there will be no teachers at all, but there will be a mobile connection instead. But in our developed world, we have the luxury of teachers. And in this environment, we still need teachers, and maybe we need them even more than we did before. And the reason is that while we learn everything without much human interaction, technically, we need to pay special attention to gain social skills. What we see will happen in the next generations is this: all the boring tasks will be done by something else. Well, machines, narrow AI, robots, whatever. There may be things I cannot imagine today. Who will do this boring stuff for which our parents and some people still from 9 to 5 morph into machines to do these works? You will never morph into a machine. What will then be left for you? Wonderful thing. You will all get the chance to use the single competitive advantage what you have over the computers and machines. This is, you will be compassionate human beings. You will specialize in being compassionate human beings, interacting with each other. And this for me is wonderful to know that even if I don't know what's the technological base you will be using in 20 years' time, 30 years' time, or your children will be using, on any technological base, liberal democratic values, human rights, these things will be taught in an age-adapted way in our school system. This is the only way you can be sure that you will be able to outcompete all kinds of machinery and technology. They will never be compassionate human beings. This will be our domain, and you will all operate, and you will all make living out of being a compassionate human being. It's already happening. If you think of the online jobs, it's very old-fashioned to think that technology takes jobs away. It doesn't. It creates huge amount of new jobs, which are mostly related to what? If you think of the biggest, at least in money terms, innovations in the last 20 years, including Skype, for example, Estonian innovation, what do these innovations allow you to do? I mean, they're about talking. They're about chatting. They're about seeing each other's faces 1,000 kilometers away. These things make money. Ability to communicate, ability to talk. It's not like you have to be a computer specialist. I mean, these guys, of course, make good money as well by creating us the infrastructure. But everything what is inside the tube, this is something which actually shows that you can now make money from simply talking to people. Traveling YouTuber was not a job, and many among us still refuse to call it a job, yet it creates money. Obviously, it's a job. And most jobs will be this way. There will also be, of course, intermediate phases where you simply can use technology to do the old-fashioned jobs like bookkeeping, as long as this is not all done by a narrow AI. Bookkeeping is very boring. I have a degree in it, therefore I know. And I'm quite sure narrow AI will soon do all bookkeeping and financial resources allocation for all of us. And what will be finance, we don't know neither. But meanwhile, you can imagine that you will work from Finland, for example, for some companies who are in France, in Estonia, in Australia, bookkeeping for them if you know the legal code. So that will be the intermediate phase where the old jobs survive in internet and they are enhanced and your opportunities are enhanced. And they are enhanced in this way that you can allow yourself to be more narrowly specialized because you can sell your skills not in your own village only or town. You can sell your skills globally. So you can be narrowly specialized. And you can be more independent because you don't have to gather into enterprises anymore to create high added value because you can sell what you know to do globally. This tendency we already see. Much more people are nowadays independently working. I now come to the empathy. We're all Europeans and we value our European social models. We value them highly. And if I think of this new world, then you will work in maybe 5 different countries at the same time for 10 different companies. The question is, will you have a safe social dock somewhere? Will it be where you live? But where will you live? In the winter, because your job is geography neutral, you may choose to live at the Mediterranean if you hate snow. I love snow. I may choose to live in Norway. I mean, we don't know, what the choice is, but the choice is free for you to do. So this old thing which we had in 20th century, which created our social systems in Europe, that there were big companies where everybody gathered and worked, and the tax river fell into the coffers of the government. And then we used all this largesse to offer you all, wonderful social services in Europe. This is dead. It's like, Alice in Wonderland. The cat has already left, the industrial area has already left. The green is lingering on. But, sorry, on this side of the hole, of the rabbit hole, the green will soon be gone. What to do? We haven't managed to create a solution. You are voting with your legs, mostly. People who are better off and make better money from working digital, they simply opt out. They opt back in when they fall ill or want their children to go to school somewhere. But we have lost a good part of their, earned money, which we could have taxed. Only the pension system penalizes you for opting back in. No other system does. And I don't blame you for it at all, frankly speaking. Instead, what we should do, and if we don't manage, then you should do when you run for political jobs, some of you will, I'm quite sure, is to adapt our world so that instead of having this tax river falling in, we will fly from flower to flower and gather the taxes and try still to offer the social services. Because we, I think, as Europeans, we are not ready to give up on the publicly provided social services or redistribution of services in wide sense of the word, meaning also, for example, this wonderful education what we have. So we have to have a different agreement between people and governments. You work wherever you want, whenever you want. It doesn't have to be that you have to work a certain number of hours or earn a certain amount of money like nowadays. And we will make an agreement based on which you will get a certain package from a government. This package, by the way, has to work globally. Estonia has got part of it already. Estonian citizen does not stop being a voting and participating Estonian citizen when they leave Estonia. You can vote online. You can still use public services online. You can still, be part of Estonian society while you are away. I believe we should also offer this digital school to Estonian kids working and of the parents working freely in the European Union, living elsewhere. I hope we will achieve that as well. This demonstrates that we are already on the way of accepting that our citizens are not at home. They're global. They're everywhere. And we accept the responsibility for them still. And we need to break all the old OECD rules and agreements in order to fit for this new world. Everybody will choose a safe dock, which will be their service provider, pay this safe dock the taxes, and use these services globally. I hope it will be based on your cultural space. So Estonians will use Estonia, Finns will use Finland, etc. There will be, of course, always people for whom this is less important, and they will simply use what is best. Which is the argument why I think if we move quickly in the Nordic countries, we will get more and more of taxpayers who will use our countries as the social dock which we need. Because this way we will be able to remain empathic, compassionate human beings in society as a whole, still providing education and opportunities to our people. Now, too often I hear that we cannot do it. Frankly speaking, that's why I think the third important part of my speech will be will. Yes, we can do it. We can, of course, remain 5 years in discussions about how to tax Starbucks in Europe. Or we can really admit that the industrial area is simply over. It's gone. People will never again work from 9 to 5. They'll have much more flexibility in choosing their working hours, working places, and quickly adapt before we lose too many people from our social systems, because then we'll be very much, down to relying on privately provided services. And the precarious people will lose out. And we don't want in Nordic countries anyone or anybody to lose out. We want them to participate. This is very important for us. So for us all to think together how we can do this new society. You notice probably that I'm not talking about technology. That's not my job. My job is societies and thinking how this technology changes our societies. And there is one way of seeing everything as a danger and as a risk, and there is the other way and opportunity, seeing everything as an opportunity. And the more and more we use this technology as an opportunity, as you all are anyway doing, the more and more we can actually create social benefits for our societies. We have been quite reluctant in public sectors in Europe to first understand that we cannot ignore what is going on. We have been very slow also in public sector in starting to benefit from it. And Estonia, during our EU Council presidency, made huge efforts to achieve at least one thing, that the governments in Europe accept the responsibility in technological age. Yes, for some reason which Estonians don't get, most people in Europe accept that their governments are lagging behind in the service provision quality. Because, I mean, private companies nowadays cannot afford to operate on paper and capture their client base by opening offices here and there. They all online. For some reason, governments are hoping that people will continue accepting that they have to go to offices and with papers and everything. I'm sorry, this way governments are making themselves obsolete. And this was something which we were trying to put through during our council presidency. Your people are in the internet. Your businesses are in the internet. Your civil society happens in the internet. That they know because everybody needs votes, of course, but anyway. But you have a responsibility and obligation towards your people in this new technology world. If we think of the street space, can we imagine the world, or at least Europe, without identification means? Passport? Cannot. We have our analog passport. So why on earth nowadays, when most transactions and interactions have a technology part, internet part to it, think that people don't need the same passport provided safety in this new technology world? Frankly speaking, it's government's obligation to keep their people safe everywhere where they go. Tech space is as common as is street space. We have never felt as governments that we can step aside from the street space and say, this, guys, this is dangerous, let's all go somewhere else. I mean, come on, we police the street space. We allow people to identify each other so they know with whom they're dealing with. Then we can check each other's backgrounds and etc. in analog world. Technological world is exactly the same, and I believe we managed to convince during our council presidency the rest of the governments that your people and businesses are there. It's now for you to provide them the opportunity to stay safe. I like to call it cyber hygiene because it's like soap and water, running water preferably, keeps you safe from bacteria. The digital identity, the passport in internet world is the soap and running water of cyber hygiene. You cannot get away from that. You cannot tell people that stay safe in internet unless they have two means to stay safe in internet. And that's where the digital ID comes in. You were shown the ID card. I found it very old-fashioned. I mean, mobile ID is much more comfortable to use, and smart ID is much less dependent of any physical element. So there are several options how governments can provide their citizens with digital identities and passports. And therefore, I find it extremely unfair when parliaments call Facebooks and others, Amazons, to testify and say, mea culpa, we didn't keep your citizens safe in internet. Sorry, no private company can create an identikit which will have the power of legal space behind it. So yes, people of developed world who have been left alone by their governments in digital sphere have to rely on Facebook and Amazon identikit. I rely as well if I want to buy from Amazon. I've been talking to Amazon leadership that they could somehow create an ecosystem which involves Estonian digital ID. Let's see where it goes. But this is the only thing which private companies can do, because they don't have the power of law behind them to guarantee that these identities are not false. We politicians, we have this power of law, because this doesn't happen because we have the technology. It happens because we create legal space for this technology to function. Many of you have all kinds of cards which have exactly the same chip on it like ID card has. They open doors, they, give access to your bank accounts, etc. But what they do lack is this legal space behind it, guaranteeing that if somebody presents this identity, they are who they claim they are. In Estonia, we guarantee this because everybody has their ID, they keep it safe, and therefore the state takes responsibility that if I sign in, and let's say you sign back in with your, I hope you already have the residency card, we are really who we claim we are. In principle, of course, I mean, and this is what the argument we hear daily is, but it's not safe, you may lose it. Then I say, yes, nothing. Globally is totally safe. You are not guaranteed safety if you have low level of cyber hygiene and you vote 2 of your PIN codes on the card, and everybody can therefore, I mean, mimic you in internet. On the other hand, it doesn't have to be absolutely safe. The only thing which we have to demonstrate is that it is safer than analog. And this is easy to do. If you go to the notary office with a passport which is stolen, maybe even falsified, you have changed the picture in it, nobody asks you any PIN codes to prove that this is your passport. If you find somebody's ID card on the street, and at least the codes are not written on it, you cannot use it. So yes, it's not absolutely safe. For that you need to have, well, cyber hygiene. You don't write your PIN codes with a marker on that card. I haven't seen any Estonian do that, I have to say. Also, if you did, you cannot use it as a passport to travel, and we use it as a travel card, so probably that's why nobody has been doing it. But anyway, it's hygienic, cyber-wise too. The analog passport is not safe. Same, of course, applies for digitally provided services. Many people ask that, well, is then e-voting safe? I say, yes, we have no incidents. People have tried to crack into the system and hack into the system, and they have not managed. But I mean, I cannot claim something is 200% safe. Nothing ever is. On the other hand, if I compare that, for example, it's widely accepted that you vote by putting your ballot in envelope and sending it to the vote counting office. This is acceptable safety level. Now think, I mean, nobody knows whether you were alone when you fulfilled this ballot or you had somebody influencing you. It goes into the envelope, which then goes somewhere, and you never receive any feedback whether it was counted or not. We remember a couple of years ago in one European country, the whole election of president had to be rerun because the envelopes melted. I can tell you, I didn't have to convince that president why e-voting is safer. I mean, in e-voting, you log in, you vote, you get feedback email, the connection between your vote, what you cast is not visible to anybody. Nobody, by the way, knows that you went into the system when you use your card and identify yourself for voting, because there are hundreds of other services available and it all works through the same X road. So it's extremely hard even to deduct that somebody went voting, for example. And how to guarantee that you were not influenced by anybody while you were voting? Very simple, you can re-vote. So you can sell your voice to everybody, I mean, during the several days while you are voting. Therefore, it becomes pointless to buy it. See, it's simply safer than paper ballot. Nothing's absolutely safe. I mean, our planet is totally not absolutely safe, as we know. I mean, climate change is happening. So I cannot say that, I mean, there will be never accidents in digital sphere. Actually, we've had quite serious ones. Once we had to shut off Estonian digital environment globally because we were under attack. And then we didn't. And can you imagine, even today, we still do not have an international legal space which will make sure that if I, as a digital government, come under outside threat of a cyber attack, where can I go and complain? I mean, it's definitely well affecting my sovereignty. Where can I go and complain? Is it Security Council in UN? Not yet. We hope it will become like that when Estonia will be member there, and we want to have influence in that. I have nowhere to complain. 11 years after Estonia came under the first attack on our sovereignty via cyberspace. Therefore, this will also be your responsibility to internationally agree that our analog norms are applicable also in the cyberspace. I come and keep coming back to the legal space. Tech innovation happens anyway. What is government's job in tech innovation is exactly this: recognize and regulate positively so that technology can be used, preferably so that governments themselves use the technology as well. because it simply gives you knowledge how this thing works, and you're just smarter in regulating as well. This, in Europe, we haven't learned how to develop our society to be technology ready, independent of what technology we are exactly talking about. In Estonia, we are now thinking about how to regulate for artificial intelligence. We know it doesn't exist, and well, I don't know, Jaan Tallinn, the creator of Skype, tells me that we have a 50-50 chance that by 2050 we will have a true singular artificial intelligence. I doubt him, and I doubt him because when I graduated from university in 1992 with a degree in genetic engineering, we thought we will clone a dog by year 2000 and a human being by 2020. Well, we cannot make a proper virus yet. We can make a bad virus only. So I don't necessarily believe that AI will be here by the half century. But what I do believe is that if we today regulate for artificial intelligence, both nationally and globally, we will have all the lower levels of automation and autonomous systems, automatic and autonomous systems regulated and covered as well. And then we don't have to re-regulate all the time. Estonia is discussing, and I'm quite sure that by next summer we will have something in the pipeline in the parliament. And why I'm so sure? It's because Estonian people are now looking what is going on in technology sphere, and they're seeing that artificial intelligence, intelligent things in a narrow sense of the world are coming on the market. And since they are so used that the government has to be the best service provider, their expectations are high that the government will use these things. Then they now ask, when are you going to use this? A simple thing. If you have algorithms which are thinking together and coming to a conclusion about the human being, to do this human being something, can it be done within the context of current legal space which you have in this country? No, it cannot. We need to regulate for this situation where different algorithms come together, decide something and do something to a human being. Our citizens want it from us. They probably don't want us to gather information about them not being working or gainfully employed, being an unemployed and a young person doing nothing, and then coming and offering them help. Then they will have this question very quickly that why did you nose around and think about, use my data without my consent? This we cannot do. But they very much want that if I have the right to a payment, for example, if you have a baby, in Estonia we have universal child support, you will have the right to get a payment. And people asking, why do I have to apply? I don't have to apply. You know my bank account because I pay your taxes. You know I have the baby. Just pay me out. Our citizens are demanding that our services become proactive. See, for that you need to, again, think how to do it and enlarge this legal space. Make a law which will allow you to use this technology. And systems which we are now talking about, they are algorithms which exist in a digital world. They not walk around among us. But there will be also things walking. There are these delivery robots, aren't there? Well, Estonian traffic code can regulate for an accident between a car and a delivery robot. But it would be very tiresome if we had to continue going through each and every law and each and every technology cycle adapting our law. It's much better to go straight to the end, accept that artificial intelligence is an entity, and regulate for it horizontally, so that all our legal space accepts that there are people in our society and artificial intelligence in our society. This is what we need to do. Why we need to also globally control the evolvement of the artificial intelligence? Well, we all know that artificial intelligence can also be dangerous in many ways. And we want to know if somebody is coming close to creating it. I think we need a system how we will have internationally the right to go and monitor if we notice a development which kind of seems to indicate that AI is evolving somewhere. Like we noticed, there is a black hole where a lot of energy goes down because, well, according to our current understanding, true AI will be extremely energy consuming. So a certain level of energy consumption, unexplainable, could actually trigger a monitoring mission. We should have these kind of laws in space, in our legal space, because first of all, we don't know whether it will be even a government who will create something like this. It may be somebody else. I think it will be if it happens somebody else. But we need to be ready to know and be able to monitor and follow what is going on. Because otherwise, indeed, we cannot be sure that there will not be a machine which will make our world into paper clips. This is the old worry about AI, that it will, for some reason we don't understand, make everything into paper clips. We must be ready to guard against these situations. And it's actually high time we start talking about these things, because if we don't, we are too late. When this thing is already there, making the world into paper clips, we've lost. So we have to react right now. On the other hand, I'm not too worried about AI making our world into paper clips, because you don't need AI to make the world into paper clips. We are currently doing it ourselves. And here I refer to Bitcoin. I'm sorry to say, money cannot be created democratically. If everybody creates money, we don't understand what's the underlying economy of this thing. Yet many people globally believe that Bitcoin is describing some sort of economy. What can you buy with Bitcoin? I heard a place in Tim Draper's university, all costs, all inclusive. Somewhere you can buy a hamburger probably with Bitcoin, but not many places. So what's the volume of the economy which Bitcoin is reflecting? There's billions out of it. There isn't such an economy. And that actually brings me to the conclusion. If we are not careful, we don't even need AI to make our world into paper clips. We are extremely good at using real environmental resources, because mining Bitcoin takes environmental resources. And we are making our world into paper clips ourselves using this wonderful technology. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day discussing all these many facets of the new digital world.
Some real life physical presence after this digital concept. Madam President, thank you again for this speech. Thank you for having us. It's not every day that the day continues of people thinking about paper clips and worrying about them. But I think it's something to think about. Just as a matter of curiosity, I started to think of paper clips before I go on. Madam President really well told about the fact that people of, so to say, older generations, for example me, I was born in '81, and again, first computer I touched was at the age of 10, and then it was only for an arcade game and not for everyday life. We tend to be confused about, can we give any advice? And probably the right answer is not much. But I wanted to ask at this point, how many of you, dear guests, students, have used a paperclip during last half year? I see half of the hands, so there is a hope. The paperclip still exists. And now, to borrow for this idea about, this conference is built slightly differently than those embarrassing conferences where older people come and say, you who live in the digital environment, about dangers that I perceive there to be. This time we build it differently. We do have two speakers, but both of them are actually people who work with young people, who are young people, and who are, in these terms, are not invited here to tell you about what's wrong, but rather to tell you about what is done and what can be done. Then we will have some parallel sessions that will have few experts, again the people who work with young people, to develop some ideas and ask you about what do you think needs to be worked about. And then the main part of the program is actually you working together. So I really hope this time we avoided this trap of trying to tell you what to do and actually embarrassing ourselves in the process, not being able to understand what happens. So, are we ready to go on? Yeah? I see many contemplative faces. Let's go on with contemplative thinking. I have here Miss Heini Karpinen. Yes. And Heini, yes, she has so many things and experiences in life, so we agreed that I will really shortly tell anything about you. So you're CEO of Me Hackett, and you will tell us what it is. But also you're a person who works with education and with business as well. And I think it's very common nowadays, actually, so people are not in one factory, so to say, but you're in between two fields. So I'm really curious about what you can tell about education, business, and hacking, hopefully, a bit. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me. So my name is Heini, and I'm very, very happy to be here today and until tomorrow, so we will have chances to talk. My background, as you said, is in education, but I've worked as a consumer researcher and a business developer. And at Me Hackett, I work as a CEO, and what we do, we are a learning company, founded in the year 14, so 4 years already. And so in my work, I feel that I get to combine these two interests that I find truly, truly fascinating, learning and business, and then thinking about how to use digital tools, digitalization, to make learning even better. So during my presentation and also in the workshop in the afternoon, I will invite you to join to thinking about two things. First, what might be the digital tools that are used in the youth work in the future? And the second one is how might we in youth work help all the youth, all the young people to gain the skills that they need to live a meaningful life in the digital world. So two kind of different things, the tools that are used in some youth work, business field, and also the skills that the youth needs. So I know that in this room there will be a lot of founders or innovators of some services that are going to be used in the future. And I'm really happy about the Nordic cooperation, and it's already blooming. And I can talk about the education technology business side. There are many networks that also the same countries that were mentioned that are here present are very active in working together and finding new ways to collaborate. And that world is definitely not ready yet, so we will need all of you to join in thinking how we can do things smartly together. So I love to think about how things might be, and I love to dream, but also to ideate what kind of businesses can be made or what kind of products can be made. And what I have noticed is that two kind of principles help. One is that innovations are often new, fresh combinations of old ideas. So you take one thing from one field, another one from somewhere else, put them together in a new way, and that can be a true innovation. And this is why also I will, in the end of my presentation, I will share a couple of global consumer trends with you, which I find that they might be relevant to perhaps maker culture or learning field, just to inspire us. And then a second principle that I find useful is that to make an innovation or to get an idea of something that will actually help to change in a systemic way, on a systemic level, in a big level, we really need to start thinking big first. And let's forget, let's not talk about that that cannot be done, or how is that even possible? Let's forget all those. So let's just think big, because once we get to the point when we are thinking how to make it reality, it will become smaller anyway. But if we start with small, it's hard to make it scale up. So that kind of a kind of positive way of thinking. Okay, let's start with learning. As I look at the world with like these learning, like education glasses, I like to just to make a foundation for us that we all learn in a different way. We're interested in different things, and we are motivated by different things. And yet, education or youth work, we should treat everyone equally. And as Madam President also said, that equality is the goal, but equality is not, it doesn't mean that we give the same to everyone in education, but rather we encourage all the learners to think what they are interested in, and that we seek to see what the level is that they are at, and we help them on their own level to get further. And that's equality. And I think digital technologies will help educators and youth work very much in this particular challenge. So it's a nice winter day here, so I decided to take this allegory of swimming when I'm trying to explain or get us the feeling of learning. What does it feel to learn something? And learning how to swim is it can be compared to learning how to master the digital skills or how to become a digital maker. Because you need to get wet in the water, you need to get your toes wet in order to learn how to swim. And also, it's a long process. It doesn't happen during one course. It's something you need to be motivated to try again. You need encouragement from someone you trust to keep on going. For many, technology and programming, which are part of the digital maker culture, they might not be as inviting as for others, like we heard ice hockey and football might be more interesting for some. And also we hear that in some university programming courses, you learn long time of some certain coding language, but not even once during the course you hear what the coding language can actually be used for, what can be made with it. So this can really affect on the motivation of the learner. So when you learn the rules, you play with in the field with friends, you learn how to communicate with different contexts, you get positive encouragement from peer groups and surroundings. And also making a creative project with groups of children, we need rules and objectives in order it to be goal-oriented education. But not only for the education's sake, but also for the encouragement of making a creative process itself. And once we get deeper into the skills, we master something so well that we can challenge ourselves, and we start, regarding creative projects, we start to find the potentiality in ourselves to decide what we really want to build. And at Me Hack It, we don't tell students what they should do. We encourage everyone to start thinking, what is the problem they want to solve in this world? What is a challenge that they find interesting? And we support the students to find the tools and learn how to work on those tasks. So when we have a complete focus in what we do in learning, it gets very clear. We learn how to prioritize, and we can make up our own goals. And education is not really only about learning skills, but it's about learning who we are. And in our education at Me Hackit, and if we talk about becoming a person with a maker mind, our goals are something like this. We wish that we can teach youth that a tech can be a force of good in the world, and that they can feel that they can contribute to the digital world, and they can feel confident, and that they feel that it's intellectually engaging. And only by making actual projects, they can get the feeling. We've heard of 21st century skills, and the future of work looks very different. And we want to make sure that everybody on this allegory of swimming on this beach, they will learn how to swim and dive, and not because someone is making them, but because they want to. So we are talking about the highest level of hierarchy of needs by Maslow, which is the self-actualization. And okay, the example of learning how to swim might be a perfect model of learning, or perfect story, because the water in itself is very inviting environment. How can we make the digital environment inviting, in the sense of like everyone wants to learn how to do the basics of programming, for example. Human motivation is the key to most learning. Without motivation, there is not much learning. And at the same time, motivation, it kind of represents the toughest nut to crack by designers of digital services. And this also means that when we are talking about education technology, when I talk to my colleagues in other companies, they often struggle with how to make a product so motivating that the learners will actually keep on wanting to come back. There are some fields which have learned how to do this really well, like gaming. They know how to, or some streaming services. People get pleasure from using them. I think the challenge with us is, in youth work and in education, how to make it so motivating that the digital tools will actually change the way we think and the way we learn. Here are some random consumer apps. They can facilitate the realization of our true potential. We all use some of them. And what's common, especially products that allow us to connect with each other, communicate, learn, share knowledge, also can negatively affect our lives, of course, but those have the biggest potential. What was the last time you feel that you realized your full potential, and why did it happen, and was there an app for that? Let's take a look into the field of education technology. I think education and youth work have a lot in common, and I think many of the apps that the world provides at the moment can be used with youth, whether it's in school or in after school or in wherever field. So we can divide education technology products in this kind of way, if we like to. We have specific tools that are making learning analytics possible, or they have figured out how to make it better than it used to be. So for example, school administration, these companies have figured out how to make the traditional way better with digital technology. And it's in the nature of the digital tools that they do a certain niche better than the traditional model did. But alone, the one app or the one service is unable to cover all of it. And this is the reason, I think, what makes the field very different. It doesn't look like a one whole, like a bank. We go to a bank, one particular building. We get the services we need and we go home. But the whole bank is split into thousands of different kinds of ways. And we just need to be able to choose the ones that fit our needs. Another way, and also these pictures, these two models, I took them here partly to explain how big a trend tech ed or education technology is at the moment in the world. Many teachers feel pressure when they would see these, like, how do I know what to choose? But you just need to try, you need to listen to other teachers in your environment. I guess that's one way. But this model, instead, it has divided learning apps and put them in these different colorful boxes based on the, like, sort of the phase where you are at during the learning. The first ones are about creating maybe learning content, then managing the learning process, or teachers or students, discovering, connecting, experiencing learning, and so on. My question to you, what kind of boxes, what kind of titles would you find that are the most needed ones when we are talking about digital tools in youth work? The path is different, but how would you map the world of apps or digital services? I would put MeHackit here, and this gives me a good excuse to talk about MeHackit. So we have a service called Atelier. And MeHackit, the vision has always been to make technology skills more equal. We work with secondary school, which means from 13 years till about 18, 19 years old. We started 4 years ago with actually doing kids' technology workshops. And quite soon we noticed that we wanted to go to school in order to reach the whole generation and make an impact. So although we are a company for profit, we are still a social enterprise, and we want to make an impact in the learning field. And this is also one form of a company that I think we will see more and more in the future, these social enterprises. So after we went to secondary schools, also we worked with teachers, and there were more and more teachers, educators requesting for our training services. And this is what our value proposition would be like if you have an innovation. You cannot really call it an innovation if it just brings something new to the game but doesn't take anything old out. So what we are fixing is that we want to help educators to teach programming in schools, but we want to make them spend as little time as possible for preparing. Schools globally, they cannot afford sending all the teachers to training. So we must do it in another way. And educators are used to learning by teaching. So we put the training and the teaching kids in the same package. here are some concrete examples of what we have. We have virtual classrooms where a teacher can take their whole class, and the class every student can proceed at their own time and pace and make their own projects that they find interesting. If you know any teachers or youth workers who would be interested in trying out our services, please send me an email and we can set up a testing process with you. Here, this is from one class. They're working in pairs, and as you see, there are some pens and papers on the table. They're designing the piece of art they're going to make. And the emphasis is on the design process. They first think, what do they like and what do they want to make? And then they go on and do it on a computer by programming. In here, cross-curricular and project-based ways of teaching. They are big in the national curriculum in Finland at the moment, I believe also in other Nordic countries. But there are also big challenges as they're new, and teachers do not always know how to combine art with programming, for example, or music with programming. And we will help them. And we have in fact been in 120 schools in Finland over the years, and also abroad. We have had some educational events here and there. And I will share you one story of CodeBus Africa, which was a 100-day adventure into creative technology. And we brought together African and Finnish innovators. And we went to 10 countries in 100 days, and we gave almost 50 workshops for young people. Many of the young people had never touched a computer before, and after a couple of hours, they had programmed a song. And in here, we started the workshop by clapping hands and making rhythms and finding out what kind of music you like. And then we continued by programming the rhythms and the sounds, and then in the end, we had a concert. And this was a really valuable experience for the students. So as with many startups, I think you might have some startups yourselves. The vision is very important, that it's clear. Our vision has always been the same, but we have been looking for the way to make it happen in the most scalable way. I will finish up with a couple of consumer trends, like I mentioned. These are about these are trends that are supporting the maker culture idea, and so in recent years we see that traditional handicrafts, artisan products, hyper-localization, voluntary simplification, and environmental awareness have become popular among young people. And I think many of these, we see them in self-actualization, in popular blogs, in aesthetics, in media, in all sorts of things. And the boundaries of creativity or art and engineering are mixed. And it's something that is an interesting, and here behind you can see a food truck. It could be an example of something. It's an old way to offer food on a market, but in this case, there is something new in it. New about the communication about the event. It's new about maybe making food with a new interesting technology that is interesting. Or it's a curious mix of these trends all together. So what kind of elements, if we look at these trends, what kind of elements could you pick and use in youth work that would make the youth to get interested and that would help you to involve as many of them as possible? That could be the question here. Another one, is a futurist Toffler's term. This is an old term, prosumer. It comes from two words, producer and consumer. And what it means is that the consumer is actually also producing the product while consuming it. What we see it in is media, technology. We use a product, we pay for it, but as well we are required to produce new content to it all the time. Another one would be about ownership and usage. It's a big trend, the subscription-based life. We don't need to own something anymore. We just pay for it on a monthly basis and our life is great. Or consumerization. By that I mean IT services, which used to be business to business. They are looking at the consumer side. How are people buying or paying for services? And the business to business side is using the same sort of methodology now. How can we make possible that in youth work, all the young persons to be active in both producer and consumer roles? And what about like a youth work subscription service? What could that be like? Just play with the thought. You might come up with something that is really valuable. Last but not least, open technology, open data, open science, open learning. It's a huge list of all open possibilities in sharing economy. And I think youth is where all these have actually come up, like they were born with the youth who are passionate to share. And how can we make sure that everyone knows how to surf on these waves? And just at your passion, when everything is open, you have so many possibilities to find your way, but at the same time, it becomes a pressure. There is a lot of burden. How can we help the youth to find their passion? That's a hard thing. Okay, sorry. In the afternoon, we will continue with, or you will continue to discuss together what might be the future digital tools for digital youth work, and also how to support equality in learning digital skills. Thank you.
So now, gifts first. But while our guest is receiving gifts, we have time for 1 or 2 questions. If anyone wants to ask anything or comment or debate. Yep. Can we have a microphone there, please?
Hello, my name is Anastasia and I study youth work here. I have this question. Do you take trainees?
We are always interested in trainees, and I'm personally interested in helping you with connecting you with the people that I feel that you need to be connected with. Because my job is to, I enjoy in this position where I am, I get a chance to meet a lot of people, and I feel it's my responsibility and I enjoy a lot. So let's talk. So if you are interested in startup environments or connecting with the Nordic networks and stuff like that, I'm trying to help you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's a smart approach to this opportunity. One more, I mean, I don't mean one more trainee, but I think you can be approached during the day as well. But are there any questions or discussion points here? Okay, then I'll ask the last one. You mentioned some workshops are 2 hour long, some maybe longer, and maybe some progress. But does it often happen if someone of the children who come don't manage to build a thing they want to do? And what do you do then? I mean, very broadly ask, is it rare that it happens, and maybe I'm as an older person afraid that they won't manage, or actually it's something that you actually know how to deal with?
That is a very important question, and it's part of our pedagogics to make sure that everyone will get the feeling like, yes, I made it work. So we, of course, our instructors, the teachers, when we train them, part of the training is that we see what the level is, and our atelier, the selection, the catalog of all the projects, they are carefully selected to be on certain level. We don't really like to talk about levels, because then you have this like level. You are a level 1 person, no, but it's you need these skills to succeed in this, and then you continue for the next. But it's very important feeling to design a project, to make it work, and then to show it to others, to share it to others. So these 3 parts are needed. If one of them is missing, it's not perfect. And like music, we need the concert. With art programming, we need the gallery. With electronics, Arduino making, we need to show what we have done, and it needs to work.
Thank you. That makes total sense to me and to us. One more applause for Lily. I was especially happy to this last point of yours, because somehow we managed to build this conference along the lines as well. There are going to be a time to tweak about things and work in teams, but we also have Idea Mill tomorrow to present. So this is for a reason there, especially so actually you can have this goal in mind that whatever you do is good in itself, but especially good if you are ready to present it. And we will be happy to have them presentations tomorrow. Now, I'll go into memories before presenting the next speaker very shortly. As I asked about the paper clips, I have a second question for you, which I'm a bit pessimistic about. How many of the people here have read or know who Isaac Asimov is? Can you show with hands? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, there was 5 or 6 people, and some of the participants as well. If you don't know, you should find out. I think it's one of the ingenious futurists, a science fiction author. But why I mention is that I got really inspired, say 5 or 6 years ago, when I found in YouTube his small short piece of his interview where he was dreaming. He was envisioning the future. It was 85. And back in 85, there was a TV shows that lasted for 1 hour. There was a host, there was a guest, and they would just calmly talk for 1 hour without being interrupted. And then at the end of the show, the host asked Asimov, so what do you see as a futurist? How the future will look like? What's your biggest dream about the future with computers? They were talking in 85. And he said that, I have this dream, a distant dream, that there will be devices in every home that people can use to access the storages of information online, so they can access all the knowledge and know-how that humanity has about the topic, and learn whatever they need at a particular moment. And if you find this video about Asimov talking about future of computers, and then the host is looking at him, this guy is crazy, literally looking. And said, so but won't people be completely, then lazy? Maybe they don't want to learn anything then because everything is around. He said, no, you don't get me. That's the future I love, because when people can learn what they want at the moment when they want it, then they will actually be interested in learning. So on one side, it kind of bridges from your presentation, self-actualization is important, and these devices that we have in our pockets, to me, are a self-actualization device, and for Asimov. But second part of this intro is that I think the next speaker is of this same kind of a bit of in a good sense, dreamers, but maybe not dreamers in terms of people who have funny dreams, but people who have practical dreams. Linda Leukas is a person who has one foot in illustrating and authoring children's books, but also the other foot in tech, and starting a global movement to teach young women and women how to program. And the coding is a language of the future is something that sounds very Asimovish to me. So you see the future where the coding is part of everyday life, and I would really love to invite Linda Lucas to share this future with us. Yes, you have a slide. Yeah.
Just gonna do this. Wonderful. So my name is Linda. I'm a children's book author. I'm an illustrator. I'm a programmer. I'm a business school dropout. I'm an honorary doctorate from Tampere University. And I think this is the future of our careers. They will have hyphens in them. We will have many different identities throughout our lives. Maybe one of them being the identity of a programmer. And whenever I present myself to people and they ask, what is your profession? And I give this litany of information. They say, oh boy, can you choose one that it fits into the name tag we have here? And I say, no, I can't choose one. I think I'm many different things. We humans contain multitudes. We can be many things at the same time, and that's what makes us special. Beautiful. It's okay. Yeah. Computers are binary. They can be one thing or the other, on or off. And as Madam President talked earlier about, I think our strength is in the multiplicity, in the many things we humans can be at the same time. Almost there. And then full screen. So, here's where I started my career from the idea that if programming and code is truly the new universal language, the lingua franca we learn as our first foreign languages in school, instead of grammar classes, we ought to be teaching poetry lessons. And what I mean with that is the idea that we don't learn a natural language only by practicing the grammar rules. We don't learn Russian or Estonian or English or Finnish only by practicing conjugating different verbs or so forth. We learn a language by using it, by singing in it, by writing in it, by flirting in it. And in the same way, I'd argue that programming language, of course, much more narrow than natural languages, are taught in too narrow a way. We need more approaches and more poetry in the way we teach programming. And for me, my journey started with little Ruby. She's 6 years old. She's completely fearless, a little bit bossy. And one day when I was teaching myself programming in California, 23 or 24, I would go through these books that were full of like really boring, really grey, really cumbersome text. And every time I would run into something that I quite didn't understand, I would imagine how would a 6-year-old little girl explain this concept of object-oriented programming or a variable or a loop. And that's how she was born, literally in the margins of the computer science books I was reading. And I feel something in my brain at that point irrevocably switched. I combined two very different worlds, the world of storytelling and the world of software. And I started to see that the world of technology was full of untold stories. Like, say, Apple, the company, if it was a character, it would be the snow leopard who's beautiful but only likes to play on its own. It doesn't want to interact with the other kids because they are too messy and bad. It only likes its own and nicely designed things. And if Google was a character, it would be a bunch of like really messy green robots that would be really friendly but a little bit like wild and grow way too fast. And if Linux was a character, it would be of course the penguin who's really like efficient but hard to understand. And I would go to my mom and say, Mom, this is what I want to do when I grow up. I want to leave university and write children's books about the way big technology companies think and the technology world around us. And she says, that's a horrible idea. That sounds like a propaganda book from the 70s. Why on earth should kids understand how big technology companies think? Well, here's the thing. Religions, they barely reach billions of people. Governments don't reach billions of people, but the big technology companies like Amazon, Alibaba, Tencent, Google, Facebook, they reach billions of people, and it really matters what kind of people we have inside of those companies, what kind of value systems they have, and how we make those systems visible. And we live in this golden era where you have so many tools to learn coding. I don't think that's a problem anymore. Everything from the puzzle-based activities of code.org to the open-ended playground of Scratch. But my big question was, where do stories fit in this equation? Because in some ways, stories have always been the way we humans have understood ourselves, understood each other, and understood the world around us. And no one was really telling stories about the world of software. So today, my profession is to write storybooks about technology. And these storybooks go by the name Hello Ruby, and they've been translated into 25 different languages, everything from Chinese to Estonian to Spanish to Netherlands. And actually, instead of only teaching kids about coding, I teach them about a multitude of different things around the world of computer science, from coding to how computers work, from how computers talk to each other, so what is the internet about, and the latest book is about machine learning and AI and how computers are quickly changing our societies. And again, instead of teaching kids coding, I think what I'm doing right now is preparing kids for a world where all of the problems around us are computer problems. And we need a much more diverse group of people and their brains to see computers as tools to problem solve and self-express in this world. Because often when we think about computer science, we have this idea of someone studying the computer or someone working with the computer. And rather, I would want to help people see that computers are a way of solving the big problems in the world, those of education, of entertainment, of nutrition, of health, of energy. And we need humans and computers to work together to solve that future. And that future is really important because we're slowly going into a world where it's not anymore a democratic world of technology. It's not a neutral world of technology. A few months ago, I read this article on The Guardian that stated the story about a bunch of Oxford University researchers who had shown British children pictures of natural items and then of Pokemon species. So they had shown British kids pictures of trees and plants and animals and then of Pokemon species. And by far, the kids were much better at recognizing Pokemon than the natural things around us. They had much more vocabulary to describe the Bulbasaur than the badger. They recognized Pikachu better than the birch tree. And the researchers were really worried because what happens in a world where you don't have language to express the world around you, where you don't have 7 different kinds of words for snow, where you don't recognize and give names to your surroundings? But I would argue the same is happening in the world of technology, where we have a lot of these suitcase words, these words that pack a lot of information inside of them, those of the Bitcoin, of blockchain, of algorithm. And we throw these words around and no one ever opens them up and asks, what do these things actually mean? And it's not only the problem of the young people or the old people, it's all of us, especially when it comes to the next generation. Because I work with kids and I try to explain them what this world of technology looks like, and still they surprise me every single day. Once there was a little boy who came to me and said, Linda, is internet a place? A wonderful question. Is internet a place? And I start to explain to him, oh no, internet is not a place. It's an interconnected network of servers. It's like the cyber space. It's like an information superhighway you go and surf. And I realize, oh boy, I sound like a kid of the 90s. That was my internet. This child has never disconnected from the internet. He has always been connected. He has always been able to find his location in the world through GPS. He's always been able to talk to his grandparents on the opposite side of the world. How do I explain what the internet is for a child like this? So is the internet the fiber optic cables that go from the bottom of the sea all the way to the space? Or rather, is internet the server farms hosted in Finland and in US and in Ireland that store our very identities? Or would internet rather be the protocols that define how the data that really stores our humanity travels around the world 8 times in a second? Or would internet be what happens when the 6 billion of us are connected to one another? The explosion of creativity, the cat videos and the memes that happen at this point. Well, this is the challenge with technology. It's not one or the other. It's not silos. You can't only teach hardware, you can't only teach software, and you can't only talk about the societal impact of technology. You need to do all three at the same time, and that's what makes it so challenging, and that's what makes it so important. And one of my favorite quotes is this quote from Edgar Dijkstra, who is, I think, a Hungarian computer scientist, who said that computer science is no more about computers than astronomy is about telescopes. It's about thinking skills. And I would argue that for the future university degrees, I think all freshmen should have the basic computer science course just in order to navigate the world and understand what is happening around them. And there's another fancy word for this, it's called computational thinking, and it's the thinking skills we humans need in order to structure problems in a way that a computer can understand them. And it includes concepts like logical and critical thinking, of decomposing a problem, of understanding what algorithms are. But very, very importantly, it also encompasses practices, those of persistence, of collaboration, of tinkering, of debugging. Because without, even though you would know what an algorithm is perfectly, without having the perseverance to go through the mistakes you make, you're not going to become a very good programmer. So again, the technical topic and the practice go hand in hand. And because I'm a children's book storyteller, I decided to come up with A, B, and C of the future of technology for you, to help you think about what kind of future you're navigating in. And A, of course, very naturally, is for an algorithm. Here's the thing, when I say the word algorithm, kids feel very bold. They think algorithm is a wonderful big word that feels fun in their mouth. It feels like a very adult word, and they say it with gusto and happiness. When I say the word algorithm for adults, they shiver because they think of finance and they think of Facebook. And here's the thing. An algorithm is just a step-by-step sequence to solve a problem. So this morning I was at a school here in Narva, and we did this exercise where I asked some of the kids to be the computer and other kids to be the programmer, and the programmer's role was to instruct the computer on how to brush your teeth. And the kids would laugh, they would make plenty of mistakes, they would come up with different kinds of solutions, and they would learn something very profound about how a programmer thinks. They would learn that in order to give instructions to a computer, you need to give very exact commands in the right order. You need to be careful when you name things. You need to take into account all kinds of things that you didn't think in the beginning, like, do we know what a toothbrush is? If you don't tell the computer to stop moving its hand towards the toothbrush, it will just keep moving its hand. Oh, did we remember the toothpaste? Oh, did we remember to take off the cork from the toothpaste? They learn about pair programming, about working together as a team, because this is what real programmers do too. They learn about debugging, going through their code and fixing their mistakes, and that the first version is never the one they end up with. And they learn about creativity. Because unlike in math, where you have one right answer or a wrong answer, especially in the primary years, in programming, you kind of have multitude of different kinds of answers that are correct. Some of them are more elegant than the others, but all of them are feasible if they make the program work in the way you want it to work. So in some ways, everyone here who has programmed, who has cooked before, who has baked cupcakes, has followed already an algorithm, because a recipe is a step-by-step instruction to solving a problem. And a recipe actually outlines the power of an algorithm really well, because you can make one cupcake, but with the recipe you can also make 1,000 different cupcakes. You can make cupcakes in different flavors, and this is the beauty of an algorithm. When you write it once, the computer will do it over and over and over again without making mistakes, without getting bored. When you give instructions for someone to find their friends, like go right, go right, go right, go up, stop and say hi, you're following an algorithm. Algorithms are everywhere around us, but this is not the kind of algorithm we think about when we think about algorithms. When we think about algorithms, we often think about math, and we think that is something highly difficult and scary. Well, it's not. Often I show kids these 5 numbers and I say, how would you put these numbers in order of magnitude? And it takes them roughly 10 to 20 seconds to do that. But what about these numbers or these numbers? And I tell them that this is a task you don't actually want to compete with the computer, because computers will always be better than humans at ordering numbers and sorting them through, but they still need instructions. So the way a computer might approach this problem is here. A computer would start from the beginning. It would compare 1 to 56. It would say 1 is smaller than 56. Let's compare 56 to 4. 4 is smaller than 56. Let's swap these numbers around. It would move on. It would compare 56 to 70. That looks fine. It would compare 70 and 20. Let's swap them around. And then it would go all the way to the beginning and repeat this sequence over and over and over again until the numbers are in order. And this is called a bubble sort algorithm, a really famous algorithm someone in the 60s or 70s wrote. It was a human who wrote the algorithm, and it's the computer that executes that algorithm. But again, this is not the algorithm that makes the adults shiver. This is the algorithm that scares the adults. The algorithm that is slowly changing the world around us, the algorithm that is hiding in every kind of decision we make, and the algorithm that is the black box that we don't understand. So when you go on a search engine and I ask the question, where is the algorithm hiding? Sometimes I get really blank stares, and people don't realize that the order in which you see your search results, that's decided by an algorithm that takes into account your physical location, your browsing history, all of the demographic data it can gather from you, and sorts the search results according to the algorithm. Or your ads, those are designed by an algorithm. Social networking sites, very familiar to many of you, are full of algorithms that optimize for retention and that optimize for growth. So if you go on some nice boys page multiple times a day, the algorithm will recognize that and optimize your feed so that that person's updates come first and keep you on the site. And again, the ads. And in my opinion, one of the scariest examples of algorithms in the wild is this. When you go on YouTube, obviously the videos that get suggested to you are decided by an algorithm, because every minute there's 300 hours of new video content uploaded on YouTube, and there's no way a human can sort through all of that. So they need an algorithm. But slowly, especially in the children's world, there is this creeping, weird phenomenon happening where the videos are starting to be optimized for an algorithm. And you get these monster videos like Surprise Play-Doh eggs, Peppa Pig, Stamper Cars, Pocoyo, Minecraft, Smurfs, blah, 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 that are not designed for humans at all. They are designed for the algorithm. And when the algorithm takes over our world, then we are in big trouble. That was A for the algorithm. B is for Boolean logic, and it has to do with the computers that are everywhere around us. In some ways, I'm really jealous for the people who grew up in the 70s, because you could actually still touch a transistor. Nowadays, computers are so powerful that they fit into our back pockets, but we have no idea of how they actually work anymore. And sometimes I wish I could shrink myself to the size of a silicone chip and kind of walk inside of a computer and learn how these magical devices work. Unfortunately, that's not possible unless you're a children's book author. So that's exactly what happens with Ruby. She goes into Dad's study, she types her password in, but the computer doesn't work. All of a sudden, the white mouse next to Ruby, it wakes up and says, "Oh, Ruby, I've lost touch with the cursor. Can you help me find the cursor?" And Ruby says, "Of course, I am the best computer debugger I know of." And together they make themselves really, really small, and they crawl inside of the computer, and they fall deep, deep, deep inside, just like Alice in Wonderland. I love that President Kalyhund, like she mentioned Alice in Wonderland, to the layer of the electricity, where there's billions of tiny switches that only know how to go on and off, on and off. They either pass electricity or they don't pass electricity. It's either ones or zeros. But it takes forever for Ruby to talk with these tiny switches. So up they go to the layer of the logic gates, where they meet these tiny mathematical devices that take the bits and do a little bit more complicated things with them, but still really difficult to understand. So they need to go to the level of the hardware of the computer, where you have the processor, the CPU of a computer that is really good at instructing everyone else, but bad at remembering things, so it needs help from the other components. Ruby meets the operating system, and she eventually does meet the cursor of the computer. I'm not going to spoil you how, you'll need to read the book for that. But I think more importantly, the kids get this very physical experience of how electricity turns into logic, how logic turns into hardware, how hardware turns into software, and how software turns into the apps, programs, and games we use every single day. And they learn to see the computer through different metaphors. Again, the same thing as with the internet. The old metaphors won't be very useful for much longer because this is the last generation of kids that will remember the computer defined by the screen or the keyboard or the mouse. The next generation of kids, they grow up having discussions with the computer in a world where the toothbrush has a computer, where their teddy bear is built like a computer. And I often ask kids to draw what they imagine is inside of a computer to kind of help them spark these metaphors and stories around computers. And I've asked kids all around the world to do this, and very broadly you can put these pictures in 6 different categories. There's kids who describe computers as content containers, who describe that inside of computers there's files and apps and games, and it's a very useful metaphor. This is how most of us understand what is inside of a computer. There's kids who see computers as these interlinked components, these systems and networks, and I think these are the future computer architects in the making. Also an interesting way of looking at the computer. There's stenographers, kids who describe computers through stories. They tell about the little characters inside of a computer and what each of one of their roles does. There's gear gurus who think that inside of computers there's just tiny gears. And there's kids who see and understand the transistors, the electricity, the physicalness of the computer. But all of these kids, they understand that while computers are magical, they are not made of magic, they are made of logic. And I think that's a really important distinction for the next generation. Because as said, we don't recognize a computer for much longer by the screen. For the next generation, the computers will be everywhere around them, ranging from cars, which have a navigation system, to grocery stores that have all kinds of computers, ranging from the sensors that recognize when we come in, to the teller's machine, to the ice cream box, to dogs that are not computers, but a lot of kids talk about robot dogs, or how dogs might have a microchip inside of them, to toilets, which obviously in Estonia or Finland are not computers, but in Japan they are, and you can program the toilets and modify the sound and everything, and there's even hackers who hack the toilets, which is ridiculously fun for the kids and never gets, like the discussion stalls into that domain for a long time. So there's hundreds of computers in every single home. And for the next generation to feel empowered and see the possibilities of this industry, I think we need to devise some clever ways of making computers approachable. For instance, I give kids these little on-off buttons, little stickers, and I collect everyday items around them, like a lipstick or keys or a book. And I ask the kids to imagine, what do you think these objects would do if they were computers? And I had a little girl who came to me. She chose a bicycle lamp, and she put the on-off button on it, and she says, if this bicycle lamp was a computer, I could go on a biking trip. We could sleep in a tent with my father, and this bicycle lamp, it could also be a movie projector. And I think that's the moment, especially you who work with young people, are looking for. Not the moment when they understand how arrays and hashes differ in Ruby programming language or write a perfect if-else statement. Rather, the moment when they understand that the world is not ready yet. Technology is a really good way to make the world a little bit more ready, and that they themselves can be a part of that change. Because odds are that little girl will not be the next hardware hacker of the future, but for a moment there she really felt that she could be the inventor of the bicycle lamp movie projector. And I think that's what we want in our children and a little bit in ourselves too. So rather than teaching kids about coding, I think I want them to have a very robust idea of a notional machine, a very robust mental model of what a computer is good at and what a human is good at. And that brings me to the final story, which is, or the letter, which is C, and C is for creativity and computers. I love that AI and machine learning were brought up in this session before us. Because so often when we say the word artificial intelligence, people panic. They think of a medieval monster, you know how they're like in the old maps there were like these little notes that said, here be the dragons. Well, there are no dragons here in this room today, and rather than worrying about artificial intelligence in 30 years' time, I would worry about it today. And rather than actually worrying about it, I would want to have an optimistic and pragmatic generation of people who understand what computers are good at and what humans are good at. And with that in mind, I just wanted to give you an outline of what is this whole revolution around AI and what is happening today. So AI, when we think about it, it comes so close to the very humanity of us that we feel frightened. But what is actually happening is that we just have a lot more data in the world. We have data when we click something online. We generate a lot of data when we surf online. There's sensors that log our routes everywhere, and that's data that gets collected. And that data has powered this new era of AI and machine learning. Because machine learning is when we help computers have these abilities that used to belong only to us humans. The ability to see, to communicate, to respond, to move, to reason, and even to create. But even though these things feel like they come close to our humanity, they are actually no closer to the very soul of us than they were in the 70s or 60s. It all comes down to data, and I'll show you how. In the past, if we wanted to teach a computer to recognize a cat, we would write the computer very exact instructions on what a cat looks like. So, like the toothbrushing example, we would say that a cat is an animal that has 2 ears, and it has a tail, and it comes in these 5 colors, black and gray and brown. And these kinds of instructions, they would break down easily. They would be very brittle, and they wouldn't take into account all of the opportunities and different kinds of cats there are in the world. So that's why traditional programming was never very good with computer vision, with the ability to see things and recognize stuff from images. What we do nowadays instead is we give the computer millions of examples of cats, and we allow the computer to come up with its own rules of what a cat looks like. So the way Google engineers taught Google AI to recognize a cat is by having it watch thousands of hours of YouTube videos. It came up with its own model, and that way of teaching a computer what a cat looks like is much more better than the old way. And that's because we have that data now. In the past, we didn't have thousands of hours of cat videos. So the human asks the question, the computer gives an answer. The human gathers examples of things that are cats and things that are not cats. The computer builds a model out of that, and then it gives an answer. And actually, rather than giving an answer, it gives an approximation, a certainty, a probability of whether this thing is a cat. And this is where the human is also needed. Do we trust the system enough to give it power? Do we think that this is okay enough for a computer to make a decision? So this is what the whole flow looks like. We have asked a problem from the computer, we gather the data, then we build the model, we answer the question, and as the computer gets more data, it updates the model, and these systems get better and better and better. And while we see these titles that say, oh, AI is really good at spotting cancer, AI can find the criminal from the crowd, AI can do this and this and this, what we're actually using is this very narrow machine learning model, and we're applying this one technology to multiple different problems. It's not at all that AI is kind of gaining human kind of general intelligence. It's a very narrow intelligence in a group of narrowly defined tasks. So what is the role of the human here? I think many of you will run into this problem, the data gathering phase, and many of your jobs will have to do with this. Because, you see, I show kids pictures of cats, and I ask, if I were to teach a computer what a cat is based on these 4 pictures alone, what is the bias, what is sort of the prejudice that the computer might learn if it only looked at these 4 pictures? And the kids look at the pictures and they say, maybe the computer would learn that all cats are gray. I say, correct. Now draw a cat that is not gray, so that has an example of something that is not gray. What if we were to teach a computer what a teacup looks like? What is the bias that a computer might learn from this data set, training data set? Well, maybe that all teacups are one-colored, or they have like a handle on the right side of the cup. Okay, now draw a flower pattern teacup with no handle in it. And these are very innocent and sort of quirky examples, but it's important to think about what kind of biases and prejudices we build into our algorithms as we are automating more and more of the big societal changes in our world. So, for instance, if we forget that not all nurses are women, if the person who writes the algorithm comes from a very narrow background of, say, Southern California or Northern Californian sort of heritage, they might have never met a male nurse, and then they move their own prejudices to the computer. And this is why it's so important that we have more diversity in the people who see technology in the world. So I'm going to finish up by giving a final example of what I see the machine learning and AI future looking like. It might not be that our children or you guys will do programming by learning Ruby programming language or JavaScript programming language by giving these well-defined steps for programming. It might be that you will teach a computer to brush their teeth by collecting examples of teeth brushing. And I think the biggest advantage comes from seeing the computer as a colleague, as someone who excels at all of the things that we humans find tedious and hard. It doesn't make mistakes. It repeats things over and over again faster than any human could. But the biggest advantage doesn't come from the fact that we would see AI as something that is only about optimization, efficiency, and prediction from the business world. And I'll give a final example here. So one of my favorite business stories from Finland is the story of Marimekko, the clothes brand that started from the 60s, the post-war era. And the founder, Armi Ratia, was a very revolutionary woman. She said that Marimekko just happens to be a fashion brand. It could have equally well been a fun fair, or it could have been a flower shop. She just wanted to somehow project all of the energy and vision she had inside of her. And I couldn't help but wonder, what if Armi Ratia was a programmer? What if instead of making clothes, she had chosen code to express herself and reached millions of people? And a few months ago, I got a chance to test this out in practice. So I was at the Marimekko HQ, and I decided to write a program that would generate new Marimekko clothes names. So many of you might know that there are these very sort of foundational names like Unikko and Jokapoika and Tasaraita and Liekki and so forth. And I collected 1,400 examples of clothes names that Marimekko has made. And I fed them to a neural network, which is one of these new machine learning sort of technologies. And I asked the neural network to analyze these 1,400 names and find patterns that we humans can't find, because we can't hold 1,400 examples in our heads at the same time. And then based on that analysis, generate new names. And I was really excited, and I let the computer calculate for a few hours, and the results were so bad. There were things like Valos, Inislö, Lahnilitanti, Onasut, Ikkekunit. They sound a little bit Estonian, right? But not Finnish at all. And I felt, maybe creativity is something that will belong to us humans for a long time still to come. But I realized that I allowed the computer to do this only for a few hours, and humans would spend years and years on a task like this. Maybe I'll go to sleep and let the computer calculate for a while more. So come morning, I wake up and I feel like it's Christmas morning. I feel like I have a Tamagotchi again, and I go to see what the computer has created. And the results are amazing. The computer has imagined new Marimekko names based on the examples, because it learns from those examples. And they are things like Pyyninpakka, Tanohalti, Putti, Pukukka, Tirkka, Ruitintulla. And even though you wouldn't know any Finnish at all, you can kind of grasp the sort of joyful Karelian vibe that this computer grasped from those examples. And I show this to the Marimekko team, and they go completely white in their face, and they say, oh no, will I lose my job to the computer? Will the computer be much better at generating these names than I? And I say, don't worry, I was still needed. The computer generated 3,000 of these. I chose the best ones over here. But maybe this is a way we could see the AI future, where we humans and machines work side by side, and the machine shows us a perspective that we didn't know how to see. Finally, I've been a huge fan of Estonia for a long time. I appreciate your technology culture, your civic service culture, your boldness and like idea about the future. And I think you are the perfect country to sort of epitomize the idea that technology is built on humanity. Because being a computer used to be a profession, much like being a nurse or a doctor was in the past. Computers in the past were people who were good at calculating long series of numbers. And technology as a word, it comes from Greek. It means problem-solving tools, but not only the tools, also the skills and competencies we humans bring into the problem-solving equation. So today, when we think about technology, we think about the computer, but in the past, high-tech was a combustion engine. Before that, it was the bicycle, and we don't know what the future of technology will look like. The only thing we have going for us, which Madam President definitely underlined, is that we humans and technology are interlinked for good. And that's why I think we need a different kind of definition of technology for the future. So let me present and leave you with this definition of technology that comes from an 8-year-old little girl. She was asked, what is technology, who uses it, and what is it used for? And she says, technology is electricity that loves. I'm going to say that again because it's such a poetic and beautiful way of seeing the world. She says, technology is electricity that loves. It is used to play. I use it to have a conversation with my mom. We use a WhatsApp application. And then finally, and most importantly, people uses technology. Thank you very much.
Yes. Don't go away. Don't go away for a second. We have time for 1 or 2 questions again.
1 or 2 questions. And in the workshop afternoon, we'll continue with these topics of how we can merge kind of the passion of humanities with the power of technology. Question?
Okay. Then I'll ask one.
Yes.
I was listening to the way you explain technology and computers with kids, for kids. Have you used any of it to explain it to the grandmothers?
Oh, so what I forget to
Christmas is
tell
coming, I mean.
about my job is I use stories as a metaphor because I think good children's stories speak to us at different age levels. I still read Moomins every single year and I rediscover like layers in them. But you know, like most of my time I spend talking to teachers and a big chunk of my time I actually spend talking to boardrooms and directors and CEOs and business people, because I think most people feel frightened when they hear about technology, and telling it through the eyes of a 6-year-old makes it more approachable and whimsical. And for the grandmas, for sure, but I think what if the grandma reads the book for the child and learns through that herself? So I think there is a lot of different ways to be taught, and children's books are one way of doing that, but suitable for many different ages.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Yes, the second one. Wait for a second, we have a microphone.
Yeah, I think
So it goes to the broadcast as well. Please.
What is the most important inspirational source for you?
What is my inspiration? So I get a lot of inspiration from children's books, like I said, like Tove Jansson, Moomin, Astrid Lindgren, all of these. Then I'm very inspired by sort of the technology culture of the 60s and 70s, when we still had this very optimistic idea about the future, the man on the moon and the like all of that side of things. And I'm very inspired by nature and kind of society at large, and like what makes us human. I think there's very little like discussion between technology world and kind of humanity, and I try to listen to humans very closely and then bring that to the technology world. So I read a lot and I write a lot and I draw a lot, and that's kind of what keeps me inspired. And also the children, of course, they basically every single book I write is inspired by a question a kid has asked.
Thank you so much again. Really happy to love you. So we had 2 wonderful speakers, but now it's time to go on to the practice and to let you do the speaking very soon. But we do have a format that we prepared for you. So here is Anne. Anne is one of the people who are responsible for us being here. And Anne Kivimäe is from Narva College, and we'll have this format that will introduce you, so you know what's going to happen next. Now, this is the moment that you need to refocus back on, because it gets much more easier when you understand what we mean by the format, and this is a time when you can really ask a lot of questions, why and what you're supposed to do. So, how do you feel? Yes. The floor is yours to tell us what awaits us.
Yes, thank you very much, Thomas, and thank you so much, Heini and Linda, for your really inspirational speeches. But today here is actually about you and about your thoughts. And in order for you to get your thinking going and get even more inspiration for your thoughts, we will invite you to so-called parallel sessions or work groups, if you prefer. We have 7 different sessions, exactly for 1 hour, starting in 13:30, 1:30 o'clock. And I will shortly give you a picture what these 7 working groups will deal with. First, and notice in the red the numbers of the rooms. First, Heini will, in a way, go on. She has the luxury of having already spoken. Will go on with the subject of skills, how those skills can be developed in all young people, and what tools can be helpful or used for that. So the question is how and with what, with help of what can young people learn in school, out of school, and what tools can help. Second working group is the working group of Linda, and you can dwell on it later maybe, but basically the issue is whether you can imagine, and you can imagine with the help from Linda, your career by connecting dots and by thinking as at sky level, using the metaphor of constellations. So when you really want to look into the future of your own future, then Linda's workshop is dealing with this in a very particular way. Then we have a working group of Kristel Rillo, and as you have not yet seen her, I ask her to wave, and she is in the corner up there. Kristel is deputy head of the e-services department from the Estonian Ministry of Education and Research. Basically the person who worries and facilitates different type of opportunities for young people, not so young people, and even old people to learn, to develop themselves with the help of the digital in the widest meaning. And Kristel will discuss in the working group the issue of what actually will be next in education and how can we see what's coming. Education has to be today, has to happen today, but it prepares for the tomorrow or even day after tomorrow. So how to know what are the skills in the future that are needed, and what are actually the new things to think about. What is the new cosmos, as she once put it. So thinking really into the future of what will we need will be the issue in Kristel's workshop. Then we have Martti Martinsson, and please Martti, stand up and wave a little bit. Martti is a person who has dedicated his life to participation. Almost his life so far, I would say still. Being young, he was part of Estonian National Youth Council, the youth umbrella of youth organizations in Estonia, and was very actively promoting youth participation as a young person, participating and trying to voice the concerns of young people on all the levels in the society. But today he is dealing with opportunities for for young people to be part of decision-making processes on different levels. He also coordinates Salto Center Participation and Information, which is a format of EU cooperation in youth field, Salto centers, and basically tries to facilitate growth of tools and opportunities for the participation in all Europe. And also he has been teaching in university in Australia, also youth participation. So everything to do with young people participating in decision-making processes, please go to workshop of Martti. Oops. The next one is Victoria Villig. And please, Victoria, show yourself. Victoria is a YouTuber, I would say, influencer, person who has, being young herself, grown with her passion, and she has found ways to channel the passion she has into different YouTube opportunities, but also into different other aspects where young people can make their ideas realities. So she has kickstarted many things, including businesses, but also many challenges in other forms. So personal experience of how to go from idea to implementation or to realization is something that Victoria will be discussing with you in the working group. And then we have Umberto Torus-Geerts. Please show yourself. Umberto is here from the platform in Estonia, peaasi.ee, which is a platform that supports mental health of young people. And the workshop is actually also dealing with the mental health and supporting mental health of young people in this time of digital changes and discussing how it is influenced by changes by modern world, but also what could and should be done to support young people. And finally, yours truly, I am glad to introduce myself as one of the experts in the working group. And my working group, we will be discussing youth work, smart youth work, as we like to call it in Estonia, what it is, why it is, and where do we go with the youth work that is not stupid, smart. So everybody who would be interested in this subject, please join me. Thank you.
So, before you go, wait a second, don't yet go away. Tell us again in a few words what's going to happen in those sessions. Except there will be a discussion, but why? What for? What's the outcome?
The outcome of those sessions you can see here. You will be inspired, hopefully all, to the maximum. And then after the inspiration you get from your experts, but perhaps even more from your colleagues in the groups, you will go to lunch. And then we will have teamwork sessions where you can develop your ideas, thoughts, and solutions on themes of those workshops, but in your understanding.
So whenever you see those after lunch, you will see those possible topics. They are linked to this workshop topics and probably will be somehow even influenced by the workshop discussions.
Yes, inspired definitely.
Inspired. So, are there any practical questions about parallel sessions? Just one practical question is, if I'm still confused, I understand there is a paper with the sessions numbers and names. On the door there is another paper in the lobby. So there are many places where you get information for where to go.
And please also turn to our kind volunteers for help to find your way in this rather difficult or complex building.
So at 14:30, don't forget to go to lunch. When the workshop, when the parallel session ends, at 15:15, we wait your question. Yeah.
Yes, you have to choose one.
Yes. If you choose one, try to stick there until the end. So 15:15, we welcome you back here. Before that, a lunch.